Monday Night Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. We all belong to the team of us.
Now you're welcome along, Monday Night Rugby. Much to discuss. 3 Irish provinces won over the weekend. Connacht were the exception on Saturday. Munster and Ulster officially into the knockout stages, and there's a very decent chance all 4 will make the knockout stages for the first time. Gerry Thornley of the Irish Times, hello.
How you doing? Well, Joe?
Very well. Fiona Hayes, Grand Slam winner with Ireland. You're there as well. Fiona, how you doing?
How are you, Joe?
I'm great.
Doing well.
Good. So, Gerry, I mentioned all 4 could still go through. It's worth stating, I think you made the point, given the new format, all 24 teams could still mathematically qualify. So it's not the most outrageous achievement thus far. However, in Leinster and Connacht, each only need 1 point, respectively, away to Bath, and then maybe more intriguingly, away to Stade next weekend. So that seems very doable.
Does seem very doable. Yeah, it's I still don't like this format. I think there would have been far more intrigue, Joe, if we're going into a last weekend with 5 groups of 4 and all the ramifications within that, and everybody playing the team they played in the opening weekend, playing them again, and just more of a level playing field. I think it's a very curious format. It's not spectator friendly, as I've said before. And of course, there's 16 places in the knockout stages up for grabs rather than 8. So therefore, it should be more doable for the 4 Irish teams to achieve this for the first time ever. I think what's going to happen, Joe, is when we come to it, it'll be a very good knockout phase from April onwards. You're going to have, last round of 16 with over 2 legs and back-to-back weekends, followed by quarterfinals, semi-finals, final, hopefully with full stadia across the board. And, it'll be a very exciting climax. Fair play to the organisers, I think, in hindsight, although there was lots of grumblings about it, making those postponed matches 0-0 draws at least now clarifies the picture. There's plenty of grievances from Leinster and elsewhere about how we got to this point, but now we go into the final round of pool matches with everybody technically having completed 3 matches, whether on the pitch or off it.
Fiona, just a brief tangent away from the weekend's rugby, since Gerry brought up the format, and it feels like we can't go very far at the moment without discussing the new format of this competition. I heard a few people this week, because the format was much discussed across the media, say that they hate the idea of 2-legged knockout stage matches in rugby, that really rugby shouldn't have home and away knockout stages, 2-legged affairs. That's a football concept. I'm pretty open to it, I have to say. I hope, maybe there'll be some dead rubbers, but that happens in all sports. Where are you on 2-legged home away rugby knockout matches?
Not big on that, Joe, at all. I'm agreeing about the old soccer thing. I think, when you're playing a team, like you obviously, there's analysis goes in every week, and the team get together, go out, it's a massive physical battle. And I suppose you put everything on the line in that game, and to know then possibly the next week you're going back, which you will be doing, you're going back playing in that home and away format. I'm not big in it. I really like that kind of one game kind of quarter-final, semi-final, where you just throw everything on the line. So I'm a big fan of that. So I'm agreeing with all the pundits as well. I'm not too big on that home away format.
What about you, Gerry?
I kind of hear where you're both coming from. Ideally, I would probably prefer the straight knockout format. It's always served the competition well in the past. If it ain't broke, why fix it? And but like you, I would be open-minded. I think there might be some great ties as a result of this. I seem to remember the Challenge Cup used to have 2-legged semi-finals back in the day in the noughties, and Connacht were involved in some tremendous 2-legged battles in that competition, I remember, over 2 legs. So let's see how it unfolds. There could be some cracking ties in that last 16. The way I'm looking at it is, you could have Toulouse versus Ulster. You could have Leinster versus Bordeaux-Bègles away in the first leg. Sale against Munster. And Connacht against La Rochelle. That's potentially the way I'm looking at it. But you don't have ties like that. And who knows? Over 2 legs, there could be some intrigue, extra intrigue. Let's have a go at it anyway.
Okay. Leinster 89, Montpellier 7. 13 tries scored by Leinster. They were waiting 36 days, chomping at the bit for this, I would think. And I suspect, Fiona, they had a 28-0 scoreline on their minds as well. So there was no let-up from Leinster against this weakened Montpellier side. Leo Cullen was asked afterwards what he had learned from the game. He said, not a huge amount is the honest answer. Did you learn anything from this 89-7 humiliation from Montpellier?
Just disappointed from Montpellier point of view. I thought Leinster were superb, but there was no pressure on them at any time. Defensively, Montpellier were soft. They were sitting back. There was no line speed brought. So Leinster essentially had a lot of time to think about things. You know, they got the ball to Jimmy O'Brien. I thought he put on a show. You know, he hadn't been someone I'd seen a lot of, and he just seemed to get that space, and he danced around that Montpellier defence. It was poor show. I would imagine Leo really didn't get much from it. They got their run out. It wasn't too physical. I suppose other than maybe that Tyke Furlong injury, they came away unscathed, high points on the board. They put down a marker as well to Montpellier, exactly that. They were annoyed at what had gone on beforehand, that 28-0. So they definitely put on a show for the spectators up in the RDS, but from a rugby perspective, it was excellent watching the tries. But what Leinster in general would have got from that going into this next game isn't very much, I'd imagine. And I know there was a mix of academy players, but we saw what Munster did with Wasps, you know, and those lads went out and were putting their heart and their soul on the line. I definitely didn't see that in that Montpellier side.
Yeah, I thought they were shocking, I have to say. Philippe Saint-André did, Gerry, mount a defence of Montpellier's attitude to Europe generally. So he said, we fought last year to win the Shield, as he called it. He meant the Challenge Cup. And to not show more than this performance today is very painful. We had 3 or 4 more positive cases 3 days ago, a lot in the back line. Today our back line was very young, little experience. I was expecting more than we showed, but Leinster were amazing. And he said 18 of the squad had contracted COVID in the last 2.5 weeks. Today we managed to have a team, but we changed the team 3 times during the week. We were struggling from the first to the last minute. I coached for a very long time. I've never lost by this score. There's not much to say. Today we finished with nearly all an academy backline against maybe the Irish backline, was Saint-André's defence, which, look, in the face of it is not an outrageous thing to say, and there's definitely lots of mitigation there, but as Fiona rightly points to, Munster made maybe more of a fist. Maybe they just have more depth, but it was a shocking performance on Montpellier's side.
Yeah, kind of summed up that they would opt for a long throw over the top, and a Leinster player, Josh van der Fleer, would read it better than the actual Montpellier players, just on a little bit of video research. Little things like when their scrum half went to box, they couldn't even organise a caterpillar. Their defence with no structure whatsoever. You're supposed to earn the right to go wide. Leinster didn't particularly have to earn the right to go wide. They just went wide. I doubt the back three have ever seen so much ball in one game, even in the first 20 minutes. Just kept stretching the pitch, and then gaps would appear in the middle. I'd say they've had harder training sessions every week this season, to be honest. And they wouldn't have learned a whole lot about it, but at least they flexed their pecs, and they boosted their points difference, which could be useful. It could get them conceivably into third place in Pool A if they get a bonus point win over Bath next week. And La Rochelle don't, they could conceivably finish above them. So it might almost be worth another point to them in that sense. Plenty of players looking prime. Nick would have been encouraging for Andy Farrell to see so many players going so well. Like Gary Ringrose is playing as well as ever. There was just so many good performance scores. I thought Caelan Doris was excellent. Josh van der Fleer obviously continues his form. Jack Conan back playing well. That's a hell of a back row. Gibson Park providing loads of quick tempo, quick taps, getting the ball out quickly. I mean, Ross Byrne managed the ship for 50 minutes, then Johnny comes on and gets a half an hour. The only fly in the ointment, of course, was the Tyke Furlong calf injury, which, given his history with the calf last year, is a little disconcerting, a little bit worrying. We'll see how that develops. Hopefully he's fine. It was just largely precautionary measure. So yeah, look, job done. They move on, but it was a very facile kind of game. It was it's not particularly enjoyable.
No, it's dreadful for the competition, Fiona. There's no two ways about it. I mean, you're a Leinster fan, no match in 36 days. That's a waste of time, frankly. And then they're away in Bath the following week, and then we're into Six Nations. So Europe thus far has not offered you very much. And I take what Philippe Saint-André is saying, but at the same time, it just feels like Montpellier looked at this tie and took stock of their own situation and really didn't try a leg.
Exactly, didn't try it at all, and that's the thing. There was no heart shown. There was, I know you've young guys there who should be trying to get a starting place, jump up from that academy and try and get on that starting Montpellier team. You just didn't see that. As Gerry spoke, they didn't even look coached. At times they couldn't get the structure. Even, I mean, the block down in the dead ball area, like Leicester just dove on that ball. They were just not sharp at all. They looked like they didn't want to be there. And sometimes you look at those French teams And you're just wondering what, I'm looking at next weekend's ties, and, we've talked about people possibly, it's open for a lot of teams to qualify, but you just don't even know if some of the French teams want to qualify for this, what type of squads they're going to show out. I know COVID has impacted teams, but just in general, when the French are away from home, they're kind of, especially this, they've fulfilled everything that people talk about the French going away from home, and they certainly done that in the competition. It just didn't look, like there was that they had any want or any try in them in that game, and to be honest, it doesn't look great for that competition, because you have the likes of Racing, I'm sure, who have openly spoke about their want, and Claremont, they want to be part of it, they want to win medals and they want to win that cup, but I'm not too sure about a lot of the other teams in France.
No, and to be fair, it's always been thus, and it's never been a priority for a whole cohort of French teams, but it feels like maybe that cohort is growing, or even that they're almost more militant or almost shameless in that approach increasingly, and it's very troubling for the tournament, because you take the Champions League equivalent, which is, I guess, the best equivalent we can conjure up here, and you just don't see this in the group stages, and that's the worrying aspect at the moment. Just one last
I slightly disagree.
Do you? Go on, shoot, please.
Yeah.
Do, yeah.
Like, I think Montpellier yesterday give a distorted view of things, and yes, Castres, I don't understand Castres. They leave out their main game-breaking players on Friday night at home in Munster. Had they played them, they probably win that match. They're in the last 16. That might even give them a chance of a home quarter-final. Why would you not want that? How good could that be? I think they qualified once for the knockout stages in about 13 attempts. They never seem to send out their best team in key matches, even at home. And if they had done, I think they could have won on Friday night. It's their attitude I find actually a bit more puzzling than Montpellier. It'd be interesting what Montpellier do at home to Exeter next week. It's the last game of the weekend. In theory, they should still be within a shout of the knockout stages. And I've seen they've been flogging this match on their website for the last 2 weeks, where it's making little reference at all week long to the Munster, to the away game against Leinster. So they might turn up for that, who knows? But there's no doubt that Racing definitely, Toulouse definitely, La Rochelle definitely, Bordeaux-Bègles definitely, Clermont definitely, all desperately want to win this tournament, and will probably all be in the knockout stages.
Yeah, no, I accept that. So one last one, by the way. I'm sure you have the calculator out routinely over the last number of days, Gerry. Leinster at the Rec on Saturday, 1 o'clock territory. They're certainly going to get a point. They'll most likely win with a bonus point, considering where Bath are at the moment. Would a bonus point win for Leinster secure them home quarter-final?
Yes, it would. Okay. By my calculations, definitely. They'll secure a top 4 place, particularly given their healthy points difference, and it's unlikely Exeter would surpass them then away to Montpellier. You wouldn't know, but by and large, I think a bonus point win would almost certainly set them up for a home second leg in the last 16 with the carrot of a home quarter-final, although most likely, if they were to go all the way to semi-finals, they will then end up playing away from home, as they did last year against La Rochelle. So it's not a disaster. They've made up a lot of ground. They're in a good spot. But Leo Cullen did make the point afterwards, Joe, and it's so true of this competition, that away ties are completely different from home ties. He was reminded of the previous record win against Bourgoin back in 2004, whatever that was, 92-17 or something. And a week later, they were losing with 10 minutes to go in Bourgoin. And they got through with a late piece of Brian O'Driscoll magic to win by 3 points. And that reinforced the message how different it might be away from home. Like, you've got to realise Bath, they've nothing to lose. They will throw the ball around. They will have a go. The Rec is a tricky, tight little compact ground. The pitch isn't the best in England by a long shot. It could be that they'll give Leinster a bit of a tough game. Like, it will be different away from home. It always is in this competition. No, true. They had a very tough game there a couple of years ago. Remember, and again, that pitch is always sticky. Listen, I'm just glad you're here to work out the permutation so I don't have to. This is very relieving for me. Connacht 28, Leicester 29. From an Irish perspective, probably game of the weekend in many ways. So Andy Friend, Fiona, he said, I can't think of a more disappointing loss in my time here. And I suppose you can see why. They've really put a priority on Europe this year. They were 10 points down, rallied brilliantly to go 18 points up, and then a lacklustre 20-odd minutes allowed Leicester back into the game, and they scored that try at the death, which certainly was a try despite much protest from Connacht and Bundyaki and others. The TMO, absolutely, I think it was a simple decision for the TMO, in fact. Alan Quinlan was on with us yesterday, and his argument was that Connacht almost got caught between two stools, Fiona, I'd put it to you. He said they didn't keep doing what they had been doing,
And equally, they didn't turn the game into a stop-start, fine touch, play territory, slugfest either. They sort of just kicked the ball back to Leicester and gave Leicester real impetus and an invitation to run at them, and were sitting ducks in effect. Was that your read on what happened to them in that last 25?
First of all, what a cracking game of rugby to watch. It was absolutely outstanding. I definitely the game of the weekend, but exactly that. I really felt I didn't understand why they weren't getting the ball out into the stand. They were giving it back to that Leicester back three, who were obviously running back at them. They play. We've commented all season on how this style of rugby Connacht play, and it's really good. It's really exciting, and we saw that for most of the game. But when they went those points up, it was almost like they didn't know what to do. They didn't know whether to stick to that usual style, that offload, and that beautiful phase play off set pieces. It was almost that bit in the middle, and they were kicking the ball away, but not off the pitch. They weren't slowing down that clock, which isn't a Connacht thing to do. But I think in a game like this, and especially against a big Leicester pack, because we saw that there was a big influence from the bench as well, with which we knew would happen with Leicester, and it was almost like they gave him the ball to say, here, come at us, which I didn't understand. I think one of the stats from that game that really stood out to me was Leicester actually in the defenders beaten was one of the areas where they were high above Connacht, and they had 22 defenders beaten, whereas Connacht was 8. So they were giving the ball and telling them, come back at us. Yeah.
Jerry, however months into the season, Connacht's one of their key tenets is to keep the ball and play more and have a high tempo game. So it's kind of anathema to them to just kick the ball out in what they would feel is an aimless way. But, that just screams old school cup rugby and managing a lead.
Yeah, in one sense, I have a little bit of sympathy for them, because Leicester play a bit like Saracens. They just kick everything in their own half, and they wait for you to lose your nerve and tie you down in your own half. And so Connacht didn't want to do that, so they got embroiled in a lot of kick tennis, and I could understand why. But then, unfortunately, a few things happened. Aside from, I think, losing their nerve and stop playing, really, in the last 25 minutes. Hardy made Leicester make a tackle. Their line-out malfunctioned a couple of key junctures. You remember Jack Carty's brilliant 52 and Heffernan's throw just eludes Cian Prendergast. Another time, they set up a line-out attack and Conor Oliver goes for an offload. If they execute those two line-outs, that's two potentially extended attacks inside the Leicester 22, as they've been doing for much of, say, the previous 40 minutes in the game. Then they become involved in a little bit of kick tennis. I was very surprised. There was one moment into the last 10 minutes, I think it just showed how they got a bit spooked. Tiernan O'Halloran runs a ball back. They've got a attacking ball inside the halfway line, and Caelan Blade puts up a box kick, which they feel, and they come back downfield from. And I thought it was screaming out that 28 points wasn't going to be enough, potentially, the way Leicester were coming back at them, that they needed to score one more time again, if only it was a 3-pointer to secure the game. But they didn't really look to score. They went wide once, and O'Halloran was taken into contact, and I think it was Sammy Arnold and Matt Healy failed to execute a clear out, and Jasper Weiss, he got a turnover. They just seemed to get a little bit spooked, so much so that when Jack Carty then puts a brilliant 50-minute kick downfield, as Brian O'Driscoll spotted in commentary, there was no chase. And Leicester ran the ball back 30 metres without even being confronted. And I remember that little wicked bounce inside the 22 that could have gone anywhere, went to Tiernan O'Halloran. So they were hanging on for dear life. There was a lot of grumblings about the final match-winning try. My biggest complaint on Connacht's behalf would be, it looked for all the world that Paul Boyd got himself over Jasper Weiss and made a completely legit jackal. And they couldn't clear him out. And I was just expecting Matthew Reynal to award Connacht the penalty, game over, and then we'd be having such a different conversation, even allowing for the fact that Connacht lost their nerve a little bit. So it was, apart from Montpellier, and perhaps even more so, probably the worst dressing room to be in after the game. Be a lot of anger about that defeat.
Yeah, even during the action, mid commentary, Brian Driscoll said, how's that not a penalty? And then build up to the try happened. Steve Borthwick, by the way, of Leicester, has joined the ever-growing chorus to compliment Connacht on how well he feels they're coached. Always difficult. They can play in so many different ways. A couple of weeks ago, they won via a maul try against Munster. They're maul strong again today. Their maul's so improved this season. Their kicking game was good, and when they open up, their phase attack was strong. Their strategy is very well thought out. So, effusive in his praise of Connacht. He also said, Fiona, I'm just thinking, with the Six Nations incoming, incredibly smart team, And I'm always reticent to pick out individuals, but Jack Carty, he was incredible. He's a fantastic player. The way he manages the team, just brilliant. I'm like, what? Sure, Jack is thinking, why doesn't everyone think I'm brilliant?
He's thinking that, everyone but the main man, I think. No, that definitely did him some favours. I think I've been reading that in a couple of media outlets over the day, and for someone of that kind of standing, Steve Borthwick, he's an absolutely amazing coach, and to actually name Jack Carty, I suppose he's seen him twice. He put in an absolute show over in Leicester as well. He came back. They played in Connacht. Maybe at the end of the game, the last 20 minutes, people might have questioned that game management at times in how Connacht played. But as we said, they didn't stray too far away from what they were doing. They probably should have just executed things a little bit better or kept more attack in rugby. He's got to be a name that's going up into camp. It's just, it's got to happen. We've Jack Crowley. People are talking a little bit about him now as well after his show at Munster. But he's just so consistent. He's been so consistent for Connacht. He needs to get up there. He needs to get a chance. We need to forget about that Japan game, and he needs to get out on that pitch and hopefully be, with Joey. We don't know what way it's going to go. We obviously knew he was second choice. And Byrne actually had a relatively good 50 minutes as well for Leinster. But I think Jack up in camp, he's confident. His captaincy has showed he can offer that leadership. So I think we will see it. And I think Steve definitely done him a favour by coming out and saying that as well.
Gerry Thornley, you have Andy Farrell on speed dial. So just under 3 weeks' time, Johnny Sexton starts against Wales in Dublin. Who's on the bench?
Keepers, good question, but I don't have Andy Farrell on speed. Let me think. It's a good question. Yeah, it's a good question. If Joey comes back fit in time, he'd be on the bench, but it doesn't look likely, does it, for the first game? So then it's open. Harry Byrne is the next in line, next in the rank, as going by the recent squads. But I'd be surprised if he was on the bench. Maybe he will be. They seem to have something against Jack. I don't know, but then he was called in as a late replacement in the last squad, wasn't he? So if you put a gun to my head, I'd probably just about go Jack Carty. He will be his own worst critic, and he is his own harshest critic, rather, and he will be critical of himself, I'm sure, in the way Connacht managed that last 25 minutes on Saturday against Leicester. But, Ryle Nugent brought up his relatively low kicking percentage of 73% or whatever it is. I always feel with Jack Carty, whenever they put up his kicking percentage at the bottom of the screen, they should have in brackets underneath, plays every second game next to the Atlantic, close brackets. Because it's a bit disadvantageous. I like to see everybody else play second game next to the Atlantic and see what their kicking stats will be like.
No, that's a very good point. So to Friday night then, Fiona, Castres 13, Munster 16. Gavin Coombs, brilliant try with 2 minutes to go, really sharp and pounced and finished it very well. Let's start with the positives. I feel so negative on Munster lately, and here they are through to the knockout stages, probably home quarter-final assured and indeed semi-final as well. Tyke Byrne in incredible form. Mike Haley looks to be good. Game time for Jack Crowley, who was good. Keith Earls, Conor Murray getting some game time as everybody heads off into the Six Nations. And they won, resolved to win, like 6 days previously when it was a losable situation. So they're amongst the positives, you would say.
Amongst the positives, a win away in France, I think, is always a huge task. I think I read a stat today that maybe in a long time, I can't remember the year, but it's the first time that Munster have won back away to French sides in quite some time, in a good few years. So to go over to France, play that, Castres are very physical. I know Gerry spoke that they hadn't maybe their big guns out, but it was a very physical match. You could see we had Jack Crowley in at 10. He's getting a bit of game time. I think it must have been exciting for Munster fans to see him. I thought he controlled the game. I thought they ran down his channel. I think Castres really aimed, kind of looking at their big ball carriers, run at him, and defensively I thought he was excellent, and he grew into the game as it went on. And massively, exactly that. Munster players who are going up to camp, we needed to see a couple of performances from them. Conor Murray had a good game. I thought he was good enough. Not sure if he'll be the starting 9 going into the Six Nations, but I think he got a good few minutes under his belt. But as I said, it was Coombs. I think that was the winner on the day, with the match winner, but also in how he played. We're constantly talking about that Leinster back row. All of them, all three, could there be in there? You have Tyke Byrne, you have Coombs, you don't know who's going to go on the bench, Peter O'Mahony as well. But I think Coombs done himself justice in that game. He was calm, he was getting back to his old self, carrying the ball, attacking, soft shoulders. We could see his footwork. So it was an exciting game, and Barron came on. I know the lineouts didn't go 100% to plan after Scannell's injury at times, which would be unusual because Munster have had a high percentage in winning lineouts all season. But I thought his game awareness and his ball carries around the park was excellent. So it was good for these guys to get the game time. And a positive is a win over in France. Maybe it's not the type of rugby we all want to see, but over in France, how often does that happen anyway?
Yeah, all fair points. I was reading Bernard Jackman yesterday in the Sunday Independent, Gerry. I meant to bring it back in. I brought it home so that I'd bring it back in and then forgot to bring it back in, which is typical. So certainly the word rigid Munster was in the headline. He was saying lots of things. He was really highlighting Cast's lack of interest in this tournament, second string team, COVID outbreaks, restrictions of 5,000, not the cauldron that we associate with the south of France. He said if we're judging Munster by can they win silverware best in these performances, he pretty much said he can't see it, just can't see it. He said he feels sorry for the Munster halfbacks, whoever they are, listed out all the halfbacks. He said the lack of attacking shape and structure behind them and around them compared to Jack Carty or compared to Johnny Sexton. He said night and day was what he was saying, that the Sexton Carty types just have to pull the strings, whereas there's very little on for the Munster halfbacks. He said bar one cross kick to Keith Earls, there was no creativity off set piece, and he said really, this is as far away as ever, and was very pessimistic about the whole situation. So he said, look, it's great they're winning, at the same time they're averaging 15 points a game.
Yep, hard to disagree with much of that. It would be impossible to see that kind of performance beat any of the top sides in Europe. I mean, they played much more rugby when they went down to Toulouse last year. Do you remember in the last 16 it was in Thomond Park? It was a really good game, and they played some good rugby that day. They played some outstanding rugby to win away to Clermont last season. We haven't seen that this season. They have had the most disruptions of any team probably in Europe when you think of Aces post that South African trip, when you think of Joey Carberry being injured, again losing R.G. Snyman and so forth. They have had a very disrupted time of it. Johan van Gran and his assistants have had to make constant changes to ensure there's plenty of game time around the squad. Then they lose Ben Healy for this game as well, so you get a young Devlin coming in that half. But all that being said, yes, there aren't as many options for any of the other halves. You could add in Billy Burns with Ulster as well, and all the options he has around him. Little chips over the top that are pre-planned, that, they're looking for just that kind of Rory Scannell made a couple of half breaks, but there was nothing on for him when he made those half breaks. They're a hard watch at times. Certainly Castro Munster games are a particularly hard watch. I have to confess, I did not watch this one back again, and I won't. No. There's been 19 of them now, and they all pretty much blend into one. If they're drawn together in the same pool next year, they should probably declare them both 0-0 draws in advance. But in fairness to them, they've got immense character. There's not many teams around that would have beaten Ulster with 14 men for whatever it was, 55 minutes or 65 minutes the week before, as they did, to come back with 2 fine tries. There's not many teams that would have extricated themselves from that position, going in 4 points down with just 5 minutes left. I do think Crowley played very well, but if you remember that moment in about the 71st, 72nd minute, when they have a penalty just outside the 22 to make it a 1-point game, he shaped immediately to kick to the corner, and I think Donegal Callan made the point in commentary, you want your out half there, so I'm going to take this. And I've no doubt Rog would have slotted between the posts. I've no doubt Ben as well.
I think that's an interesting point, because we have to remember this guy's 21, and I heard Donegal Callan say that, and I understand where he's coming from. At the same time, Rog would tell you himself there were many occasions right through his career, not just when it was the Mick Galway Closey group around him, but right through when O'Connell was captain, and Rog didn't particularly want to kick, and the lads would say, you're kicking, and they'd throw him the ball, and that'd give you a bit of confidence and make up your mind for you. And sometimes I think in that instance it was very kickable. He's a good kicker. I think there's a strong argument. Peter O'Mahony throws in the ball and says, not a bother to you, kid, stick it over. Why put extra pressure on the 21-year-old to have to demand it, and then he thinks, God, if I miss this, I was the one who said we go for the posts. I think actually he needs the elder statesman there to dig him out, and I kind of disagree with O'Callaghan on that front.
Maybe so, but I thought Peter O'Mahony himself looked a little bit confused himself as he saw Jack Crowley line up to the corner. I think O'Mahony then consults with Ty Byrne, and Ty says, yeah, let's go for the corner, and they lose the line out. My only problem when the team does that, and it's easy sitting in the cheap seats, is that when you elect to go to the corner when you're 4 points down with 9 minutes to go, you are effectively backing yourself into a corner because now you have to score a try to win a game. You've turned down the option of getting 2-3 pointers to win the match. Now, in fairness, thanks to Tyke Byrne winning a penalty, I don't know where they would have been without him for the last couple of weeks. His ability to jackal over the ball is just extraordinary. It is his point of difference, along with great skill set and whatever. And then, thankfully for Munster, Gavin Coombs probably knows his way to the try line better than anybody else in Irish rugby within 5 minutes of the line at the moment. And like I said, to their credit, they extricated themselves and got themselves a win. But in the essence of Bernard Jackman's column, I would agree totally. I don't think they're playing a brand of rugby that can possibly beat the La Rochelles, Toulouses, Exeters, Leicesters and so forth of this world. They're going to have to produce more than that.
No. And interestingly, he did say all his contacts in Australia tell him that Stephen Larkham's a very conservative coach who likes the kicking game and is not the coach that we might assume he is because of the player he was. So it's worth remembering that when we're all going after Van Graan the whole time. Fiona, as a matter of interest, if Peter O'Mahony and Tyke Byrne had turned to you and said, well, what do you think at that moment, what would you have said?
I was screaming at the telly to go for the post. I didn't understand it. Did enough to come back up the pitch and get another penalty and take the win. I didn't feel like the try was there for us in watching it, and then to put that pressure as well on Diarmuid Barron. I know he'd been on a while, but he had, I think, missed maybe 1 or 2 throws just in the essence before that, in the 20-30 minutes before that. So it was a lot of pressure, and I really felt that that Jack was kicking well. So I thought they'd back him and say, go on there, kid, have a go. But there was a lot of chat. I was listening to Donnacha Callan as well. I didn't understand it. Straight for the post. I thought Peter O'Mahony, as a captain in general, is old school. I thought he would have been like, let's tip it over. So it was a strange decision for me.
Yeah, I'm convinced, we must come back to it, there must be stats available to the modern player now with regard to kicking for the corner as opposed to the post, because increasingly we're seeing Ireland soften a touch in that regard, but there was a period there where just they didn't even look at the post. It was always to the corner, and you presume it's on the basis of some kind of stats. Time is against us, and our rugby coverage here on Off the Ball is brought to you by Vodafone, official sponsor of the Irish rugby team of us, everyone in. So to Franklin's Gardens then as a final port of call. Northampton 20, Ulster 24. That's a 100% start for Ulster. They were without Ian Henderson, John Cooney, Stuart McCluskey and Jacob Stockdale. Try scorers Robert Balakoon, Nathan Doak, who really does have an eye for a try, and then Michael Lowry twice, who's looking increasingly comfortable at this level. I think, Gerry, it might have been you that pointed out 11 wins in their last 13 against Premiership opposition for Ulster, which is some going. So they're cruising here, Gerry, you'd have to say. Ulster, they've got the ammunition to do a bit more in Europe this year. By that I mean maybe semi-final territory.
Definitely. I mean, I've said before, Dan McFarlane's doing a really good job, helped by a superb conveyor belt of Indigenous young backs coming through at Ulster. I think all bar Billy Burns was on 25 or under of that backline that started against Northampton. It's worth noting that Franklin's Gardens is probably the best surface in the Premiership. These things matter, and I think it suits Ulster's game as much as it suits Northampton's game. They won there last year as well in the Challenge Cup, didn't they? They played some superb rugby. We were talking about Ulster last week, Joe, and you made a good point that they almost used the Leinster template that had worked as a one-off against Leinster in the RDS, used it again against Munster, Thomond Park, even against 14 men, didn't vary it, only scored 6 points after Simon Zebo's sending off. Really, it did a little bit of what Connacht did last Saturday, the sports ground, and didn't press on and try and win the game, and probably deserved what they got in the end, which was just a loss and a losing bonus point. They had a completely different mindset from the start here. First line at 5th minute, up the line, straight off the top ball from Dwayne Vermeulen, spread it wide after going through the middle. James Hume's capacity to beat the first tackle is ridiculous. The official stats credited with beating 4 defenders. It seemed like at least double that to me. I don't know what metric they're using, but he was just continues to get them the front foot. They brought Larry into the game, they brought Balakoon into the game, there was plenty of width, and they scored their 4 tries, some superb tries. Very alert off broken play through Larry. I thought it was the performance of the weekend by any of the Irish sides, I got to confess. I thought they were superb. Played a great brand of rugby getting there. Michael Larry, just sensational. He's got ridiculously quick feet, but he's also got a very quick mind. He seems to know when the breaking ball is going to break and what to do with it. That glorious one-handed pick-up that ended with Balakoon giving the ball to Nathan Doak on the inside. Look at that try again, and Nathan Doak, Alex Mitchell's opted number is 10 metres closer to the ball when it breaks upfield. Doak having made the tackle on Roy Hutchinson, which made the ball spill for Larry to pick it up. And he's there on Balakoon's inside to score. Balakoon, a couple of world-class offloads. Ballycoon gives an offload in the third quarter, which is intercepted. And 5 minutes later, he makes that break up the left, uses his feet, dummy pass, and his long right arm to pitch the ball out to Ethan McElroy, who puts Larry over for the bonus point try. In other words, he wasn't deterred by having an offload intercepted 5 minutes earlier. And I thought they played with a great freedom, obviously encouraged to do so by the coaches, but also in their own natural youth and exuberance. And they were really good to watch. And you listed the injury toll there they have. Like, when they're at full strength, it's going to be very interesting. I don't think he mentioned Will Addison. We've gotten about him, or Joe Murphy. He was missing potentially 5 or 6 of what we would have presumed to be their starting lineup. So it's they are serious contenders for sure.
Yeah, they're in a very good place again. There remains, I think, Fiona, it's fair to say, a volatility in their performance levels. When they're bad, but when they're good, they are very, very good. Gerry summed up the whole game so well there and listed off some players in brilliant form and doing great things. Who, top of your head, who there's in an Irish 15 or an Irish 23 even? Because it's so competitive. I mean, you mentioned Hume and join the queue for that part of the pitch for Ireland, you know. So Fiona, who for you is kind of very close to 23 territory for Six Nations?
I've been excited about Hume, whether he's close to that 23 squad. Every game Gerry spoke about, his footwork going into contact, the way he gets around defenders. He's playing really, really good rugby at the minute. Maybe at times up in the Munster game we didn't see it, but definitely this week he stood out. I know there was a lot of chat around Ballycoon and Lowry was absolutely outstanding, but it was Hume was one of the players I was watching through the whole game. James Hume, he's got something. He's obviously not quite at that. You've got Bundy, you've got Ringrose, that and Henshaw, obviously, hopefully, that have that kind of, they've the caps under their belt. But if you want someone new, exciting, and we've got to start getting guys into the centre and giving guys a different go at Ireland, because
is he, Fiona, is he now ahead of like a Chris Farrell?
100% for me. 100% for me. I'm a big Farrell fan, but he's a totally different type of player and he's really exciting. And we saw Dan McFarlane, we saw by the way they played this week, they play exciting, but it's like they've the shackles off. They're doing what they want to do. They obviously respect their coach, but it's watching them play that style of rugby between you, Lowry, Ballycoon. I thought Nathan Doak, as Gerry said, was brilliant as well. So for me, it's Hume all day long. I'd be getting in there. He's exciting. He's offloading game is brilliant, but he's an exceptionally good ball carrier as well. He's someone that I've been watching a lot this season. I think he's definitely a prospect on the way.
Okay, listen, really great analysis across the board. The only last question is presumably against Stad, Connacht will get a point, Gerry, will they?
You'd hope so. That's a game on Sunday, isn't it? So Stad could go into that game potentially out of contention, or they might have Wasp staying for around 6 points, but it's on the basis that Wasps get nothing out of the Munster game afterwards. But by and large, they don't look as if they've got a very strong hand to advance to the knockout stages. They're in a little bit of relegation trouble in the top 14. Preserving the top 14 status would be their priority. Presuming Connacht can bounce back from that, maybe they can even go there and win and get it and qualify with interest. You know what I mean? Get a win there.
Well, that'll be something. Enjoy the weekend, guys. Gerry Thornley of the Irish Times and Fiona Hayes, Grand Slam winner with Ireland. Thanks so much.
Cheers, Joe. Thanks a million.
See ya.
Monday Night Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. We all belong to the team of us.